I thought I was going to down that bridge. I thought I saw death. And somehow, maybe God Almighty kept me here to continue to find a way to get in the way and get in good trouble.
Director Victor Powell. I am humbled to continue each and every year for the past 7 years, direct this conference for our youth, specifically in the DMV area, but because of this virtual world that we're in, because of our pandemic, obviously we're able to expand that beyond the borders of the DMV area. We have individuals on here from Kentucky, from Alabama, from the East Coast, the West Coast. So we're definitely excited to have a far-reaching bandwidth with our operation here, where we're inspiring, connecting, and educating our youth within higher education, K-12, and also career and life skills for our kids as we move forward. As far as today, we definitely have a treat for you within the sessions that we'll have. We're super excited to have. Without further ado, I'll introduce Ms. Phyllis Randall. I believe she is on here. Are you on here, ma'am?
I am on.
Madam Chair. Well, welcome. We are definitely thankful to have you as our keynote speaker this year, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Well, thank you, Mr. Powell. I appreciate being here so much, and I'm excited to talk. And now I will tell you that being the daughter of military, I'm very much a stickler about time. So I bought my stopwatch with me. So I want to make sure I don't go over time. I will talk for about 30 minutes and then take questions if you like me to at the end. I love the theme this year, Good Trouble. And I thought a long time about how to do this. And what I think I would do is tell my story of how I got here. And in my story, I'm going to make 6 points, 6 salient points. And at the end, I hope everyone has caught all 6 points that I'm going to talk about as far as how to get into good trouble. So I should start off by telling everybody what I do, because not everybody knows what a chair at large is of the county. And the best way to describe it is like this. The President of the United States is the highest elected official in federal government. The governor is the highest elected official in state governor. A county chair at large is the highest elected official in county government. I'm not a county chair. I'm a county chair at large. There's a difference. A county chair is selected by the body that they sit on, and they change chair every year. A chair at large is elected by the people, and I'm the chair all 4 years. I keep the gavel all 4 years, and I set the agenda for the county, for the entire county, all 4 years. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how this happened and how I came to this position as being the highest elected official in Loudoun County government. So I'll start off by saying that I come from a military family, and growing up, my parents told us that we had to find ways to serve. We had to find ways to give back. The serving was not an option. When my husband and I came here, I started serving first in one of our local school systems, and I started a reading program at Sterling Elementary School. Now, I will say, and the first point I'll make is when I thought about how I wanted to give back, I first prayed about it. If you are a person of faith and a prayerful person, I think the first thing for me to do before I start getting into anything, good trouble or not, is to pray about it. So I was prayerful about what I wanted to do. Started a program at Sterling Elementary School, and I started a reading program with 3rd grade girls. And the first book we ever read was a book called Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. If you've not read it, you should pick it up and read it. It's a fantastic book. Well, while working, after I did that, my husband and I had our 2 boys, and I started getting really involved in the school system. I was a class mom. I was in PTA and PTO. I was in the Minority Student Achievement Advisory Committee. And I realized that education was so important to me, and education moved me. That's the second point. Find out what moves you, what's important to you. And for me, it was education. I say all the time that education is the way up and the way out, and provides you a life with options. It doesn't have to be that you go to college, but you do have to look and seek for higher education. Education and all that comes with education moved me. So find what moves you. Because I was so involved with the school system, I would listen to people talk about teachers and education. And I wasn't really happy with what I was hearing and how I was hearing people speak about education and schools. And I was really unhappy knowing that in my county that was graduating, had a graduation rate of 94% on-time graduation rate. Kids of color were not graduating with advanced degrees. Kids of color were not taking honors courses and college prep courses. And that really concerned me. So I thought, well, I don't want to complain about this. I'm going to do something about it. And the first good trouble I got in was 2003. I ran for school board in Loudoun County. And when I ran for school board, I did all the things you should do. I knocked on all the right doors. I talked to all the right people. In 2003, when I ran for school board, I lost that election. But I was satisfied that I had done some good work in discussing what I wanted to discuss. 4 years later, 2007, I realized something, that if in Virginia you want to fund the school system, the board that funds school systems is not the school board, it's the Board of Supervisors. The school board runs the school system, but if you want to make sure the schools are well funded, you have to run for the Board of Supervisors. So the next good trouble I got in was 2007, when I became the first person of color to run for the Board of Supervisors in Loudoun County. It was an incredibly hard election, and I knocked on every door that I should knock on. I raised money, I made phone calls, I got all the endorsements, and I won my debates. And I say that without conceit. I say that because if we do things we shouldn't do, we should admit it. But if we do things well, it's okay to say that we did something well. And so I won my debates. I did everything. And in 2007, I lost that election. So now I'm a little upset, and I'm like asking God, why are you giving me this desire to run for these office and serve in this way, yet I keep losing? So this is the part of the story that I'm not really proud of, but when you tell your story, you should tell your whole story and not keep any parts out. In 2007, I decided I was never going to run for another office because running is hard, losing is terrible, and I wasn't going to do it anymore. And I really didn't care what anyone said, and I wasn't even going to listen to God anymore. It's like, I'm done with this. I'm not running again. In 2008, my then governor was a man named Tim Kaine. I got a call from him one day, and he asked me if I wanted to serve on a state level board. I was thrilled by that. I didn't have to run for an office, and I could still serve. And I said, Governor Kaine, this is magnificent. We talked about what service was. We talked about our faith. We talked about giving back. And I said, can I serve on the State Board of Elections? And he said, no. And I said, okay, how would you like me to serve? And Governor Kaine asked me to serve on Virginia's Fair Housing Board. I thought that'd be interesting. So I said, okay. And I started serving on Virginia's Fair Housing Board. It was a remarkable experience. Just talk about housing in Virginia, housing discrepancies, housing discrimination policies, all those things. So Governor Kaine appointed me. When Governor McDonald was appointed, was elected, he did something that doesn't normally happen in Virginia. He cleared off all of Governor Kaine's appointees. That's not done. Usually if one governor makes an appointment, the next governor leaves all those appointments there. That's called the Virginia way. But Governor McDonald didn't do that. He cleared out all the appointees that Governor Kaine made, but he didn't take me off the Fair Housing Board. And I was really confused by that. So I called one of my mentors, Kate Hanley, and I said, Governor McDonald left me on the Fair Housing Board, and I don't understand why he did that. And Kate said, well, Phyllis, think about it. So I thought for a long time, and I couldn't understand it. So I called her back, and she said, Phyllis, you are a minority woman, you're a Black, you're a woman, and you're a Democrat. All by yourself, you diversify his boards. And I was so offended by that. And I said, well, I don't want to be the token. I'm going to quit this board. And Kate Hanley said, you better not. She said, you stay there because you can serve there. So eventually I became chair of Virginia State Fair Housing Board, and it was a wonderful way to serve, and I really enjoyed the service. When Governor McDonald left office, one of the last things he did before he left office was take me off the Fair Housing Board. So now I'm disappointed again, and I'm thinking, well, this is kind of back to square one. And then I got a call that I considered to be a magic call. And I got a call, what I realized is when God does things with me, he does it with me in my car. I'm driving home one day and I get a phone call and it said, hold for the governor, the new governor. I literally thought it was my brother Jerry joking me because that's who Jerry is. And I said, Jerry, stop kidding. And the next voice on the phone was Governor Terry McAuliffe. And he said, Phyllis, this is Governor McAuliffe. And I kind of freaked out because not every day does the governor call you. And so in Virginia, and only in Virginia, do you call the governor Your Excellency. So I, in the ridiculous moment, said, Your Excellency. And he started laughing and he said, I want you to serve on Virginia's State Board of Corrections. Now, this is the best possible thing that could have happened to me. By profession, I'm a mental health therapist, and my emphasis area is substance dependence, and I've worked exclusively with the offender population. So I've worked in jails, in prisons, with youth and with adults my whole career. So serving on the State Board of Corrections is perfect. It's the perfect place for me. So now I am thrilled. Governor McAuliffe put me on the State Board of Corrections, where I eventually became chair. So now I've been chair of 2 state level boards, and I am extremely happy. 2015 rolls around and my life is good. I'm chair of the State Board of Corrections. I'm serving, although I didn't have to go through another election. I'm happy. My husband's good looking. I have no issues with life, right? No issues. My life is great. 2015 rolls around and we're now looking for somebody to run against the the chair of Loudoun County. His name was Scott York. Scott York had been in office for 20 years. He had a lot of money and he had deep name recognition and was almost probably unbeatable. And so I'm on the committee to find a person to run against Scott York for chair of Loudoun County. And I got a call from Mark Herring, the Attorney General, and he says, why don't you go ask this person? So I made a call to a gentleman named who had been the superintendent of the school board. And he said, and I said to him, I'd like you to run against Scott York for chair. And the gentleman says, well, let me give it some thought and let me get back to you. I was like, fine. 2 days later, he calls me and he says, I'm not going to do this. And I said, tell me why. And he said, well, I've been really busy for a long time. I want to give my wife some time, but also Scott York's been in office for 20 years. He has a lot of money, $500 million, name recognition. He's probably unbeatable. And so I said, I understand that. I had run for office twice. I had lost twice, didn't want to run again. That was not the good trouble I wanted. Losing again was not something I had any interest in. So we went back to the drawing board and they said, why don't you call another person? Her name was Kristen Umstead. So we called Kristen Umstead, asked her to run for chair. And she said, let me give it some thought. She calls me back a couple of days later and she says, no. And I said, well, tell me why. And she said, well, my daughter's a senior in high school, so I want to spend some time with her. But also, Scott York's been in office for a really long time. He has a lot of money, deep name recognition. He's probably unbeatable. And I said, I understand, no trouble. So now I'm driving home one day and I get a phone call from Terry McAuliffe, who is the governor. And he says, Phyllis, have you thought about running for office yourself against Scott York? I'm talking to the governor. I laughed and I said, Governor McAuliffe, I am never running for office again. And he said, tell me why. And I said, Scott York's been in office for 20 years, has a lot of money. He's probably unbeatable. And I'm not interested in this. And Terry McAuliffe, the governor, said, you know, Phyllis, I think you are going to run for chair of the county. Now, I'm a good person and a Christian raised. And so the governor says, I think you're going to run for office. You don't fight with him. You just say things like, that's very complimentary and thank you very much. And, you know, I'm very flattered. But in my head, I'm saying, I don't care what you think. I'm never running for office again, because why would I do that again? 2 weeks later, I'm driving home again and the phone rings, and it's now Senator Tim Kaine. And Senator Kaine and I have become good friends. He's an amazing person. He's kind of one of my mentors. And he says, Phyllis, how's it going? And we talk and chat back and forth. And he says, people are talking about you running for chair of the county. And I said, I know. And he said, why won't you? And I gave him my line. And he said something to me that I'll always remember. He said, Phyllis, when the attorney general of the state and the governor of the state and the state senator calls you, and we're all asking you to run for chair, do you think maybe God's trying to tell you something? And remember, Tim Kaine and I are friends, and we talked about our faith when I was appointed to the Fair Housing Board. So I said, Senator, maybe he is. And he said, so what are you going to do? I said, I guess I'm going to run for chair of the county. So third lesson, don't give up. Even when you feel like someone's let you down, even if you feel like God has not been with you, because sometimes you're going to feel like that. You may have to rest, but the third lesson is don't give up. I think God knew that I wanted this very much, and God knew where to put me. So don't give up. So I go home that night and I say to my husband, now you have to know about me. I hate to cook. But I went home that night and I said to my husband, hey, honey, what do you want to eat tonight? What can I make for you? Of which my husband said, what did you do? Right? Because if I'm offering to cook, that's probably not normal. So I said, we're running for office. And my husband was incredibly supportive. So now we're running for chair of Loudoun County, hardest race ever. And I will tell you, the first 2 times I ran, I was sure I was going to win. This time, I was sure I was going to lose. And when you think you're going to lose, you kind of lose all your inhibitions. And so I talked about things in this campaign that I would not have talked about if I really thought I was going to win. I talked about mental health treatment and substance abuse treatment. I talked about the importance of our nonprofits. I talked about the disparities of equality in our schools, in the graduation rates in our schools. I talked about all kinds of things that normally, if you're having a disciplined campaign, you don't discuss, right? Because why not get in that good trouble? I'm going to lose anyway. I'm running for it because somebody should run. So I just as well talk about all these things that really matter to me. Now, of course, I talked about taxes and roads and everything you talk about when you're running for office, but mostly I talked about things that no one else talked about because why not? I'm not going to win this election. I want to put those things out there. So I did it. And I made all the phone calls and I knocked on all the doors. I won my debates. I received 3 very important endorsements. I was endorsed by the Teachers Association, by the Firefighters Association, and by the Police Association, which is pretty unusual when you're running against a 20-year incumbent and you're the first person of color in Virginia to ever run for a county chairperson. So for me to get those endorsements were really, really big endorsements, but I got them. And I thought, okay, great. Now, my campaign manager believed that if we ran a very disciplined election, then we might be able to win by somewhere between, he thought, 200, 300 votes. I didn't think I could win, and I really wasn't thinking about those things. And so I just going to run. So we get to election day. Well, really an election week. If you know anything about running for office, you don't sleep during the whole week of the election because you're just up and tired and looking horrible and, but we get to election. And so that morning, get up and my husband and I said a prayer together. And I went out, put up all the signs. I did what you're supposed to on election day. I stood at the polls and I shook hands. I said, thank you for voting. All those things I did. I went home that night. Actually, we closed the polls, went and picked the signs back up, went home that night. My husband and I ended the day with a prayer, just like we started the day. And I was headed upstairs to get a shower and go to bed because I was exhausted. And my husband says, as I'm walking up the stairs, he says, Phyllis, he says, wait, he said, you're losing Western Loudoun County. And I said, well, of course I'm losing Western Loudoun County. And he said, but not by that much. And the first thing that went through my mind wasn't that maybe I'll win. The first thing that went through my mind is, well, then I won't be destroyed and embarrassed in this election. Thank God of that. I went upstairs, I got a shower, and I'm ready to go to bed. And my husband says, you know what, Phyllis, we should go to the victory party, the watch party. And I said, okay. And he said, people worked for you for this election. They knocked doors. You should go to the watch party. And I said, okay. So we get to the watch party. And when we arrived, we drove there. It's about a 20-minute drive from my house. We didn't listen to the election results because I figured I was going to lose. We chatted about stuff, listened to Luther Vandross, went to the watch party. Got to the watch party and the place is going insane. I mean, it's going insane. And we walked in and we were like, what's happening? And someone said, have you seen your poll number? Have you seen your numbers? And I was like, no, I haven't. So in an election, what you're looking for is four things: your worst precinct, your best precinct, your home precinct, and your opponent's home precinct. In 2007, when I lost, my worst precinct was an area called Newton Lee's, Belmont Country Club. I went down by 700 votes just in Belmont Country Club in 2007. In 2015, the numbers are coming in. Belmont Country Club is my worst precinct. It comes in, and my opponent and I have the exact same vote count. We are tied in my worst precinct from 2007, and I am shocked, absolutely shocked. The next precinct that came in was my opponent's precinct. He lives in an area called Sterling. His precinct came in, and I beat my opponent in his precinct. At that moment, my husband looked at me, I looked at him, and we both thought, oh my gosh, this could actually happen. After that, my precinct started coming in. I live in Lansdowne, so everywhere that I live started coming in, and I am just killing. I mean, it's just like votes are just, people are going insane, and I'm killing it. So remember, my campaign manager thought if we were very careful, I could win by maybe 300 to 500 votes. When they called the election that night, I won by 5,000 votes. I was shocked. My husband was shocked, and everyone was insane. That was really an amazing thing. And what I learned that moment, next lesson, talk about and do what is passionate to you. I believe today, had I just talked about the things that I thought I should talk about, education and roads and taxes, had I not talked about mental health and education disparities and nonprofit and the importance of nonprofits and those types of things, I don't believe I would have won. I believe I won because I talked about things that no one else had considered. So talk about the things that matter to you, that if you're going to get into good trouble, doing it for things that matter to you. The next thing I'm going to tell you, the story I'm going to tell you now, is the most important thing I'm going to say to you. If you remember nothing else, remember what I'm about to say to you. My husband and I stepped outside of the watch party because now we have to call my two sons. We have two sons. They were both in college. My oldest son's name is Sean, was attending a school called North Carolina A&T University. He was studying mechanical engineering and international studies. And we called my oldest son, and I said to him, Sean, I won. And he said, I know, Mom, listen, I'm watching the numbers come in online. I'm looking at them there. It's fantastic. And I'm crying, and my husband's crying, and I'm crying the ugly cry, right? Because, there's a pretty cry that looks like, like this, that's the pretty cry. Then there's the ugly cry with snots just flying, and, it's just the ugly cry in the middle of November. I'm cold. And he said to me, Mommy, you just made history. And I was like, I know, because upon my election, I became the first person of color to be an elected chair in Virginia's history. So I said, I know, sweetie. And he said, I'm proud of you. I said, thank you. I hung up. I hugged my husband. Just this fantastic mother-son moment, exactly how it was supposed to be. We called my youngest son. My youngest son's named Aaron. He was attending BCU. And I said, Aaron, I won. And Aaron said, that's cool. And I said, Aaron, I'm chair of the county. And Aaron said in a very excited voice, hey mom, guess what? Now, when you just became chair of the county and you did it by 5,000 votes and you made history doing it, when your son says, hey mom, guess what? It is supposed to be about you. Can we all agree with that? It's supposed to be about me. So Aaron said, hey mom, guess what? And I said, what, son? And Aaron said, we just got a new Chick-fil-A on campus. And I said, Aaron, do you realize I just made history? And Aaron said, Mom, do you realize this Chick-fil-A is right by my dorm? And I said, congratulations, Aaron, and hung up. What Aaron taught me that night is the most important lesson I could possibly teach you, and I learned it that night. Aaron taught me that most people have no idea who I am or what I do. They don't know that there is a county board of supervisors, let alone that I'm the chair. Most people are just trying to get through their lives. They're getting up in the morning, they're taking their kids to school. Kids are trying to get their grades and make the sports team and in their school play and applying for colleges and just living their lives. My job, my first job, is to get up in the morning and serve all the Ashans as much as I serve all the Aarons. Give as much effort to people who know I'm there as the people who don't know I'm there. If I get up in the morning and only work really hard for people who know I'm working for them, people who voted for me, people who gave me money, then I have failed. I am supposed to work just as hard for people who have no idea who I am. So the next lesson I will say, serve everybody. If you're going to get into good trouble, the trouble you get in should be service to everybody. If you are only serving a select few people, you're probably not doing the job you're supposed to be doing. So service in my head is for everyone, even if you don't support me, even if you didn't vote for me. Serve everybody. Let me also say one more thing. So I will, to finish the Aaron story, about 4 days later, all his buddies had called him and said, like, your mom's, that's real cool. So he called me back like 4 days later. He's like, Mom, what you did is kind of dope. I'm like, yeah. It's kind of, yeah, got you, but kind of missed the moment. Being chair of Loudoun County, it's an amazing experience. I set the agenda. I have the gavel. I control the room all the time. Being chair all by itself is an incredibly powerful job. My last statement to you of the 6, know your power. During my first couple of years, I didn't really know how to use the gavel. I didn't know how to use Robert's Rules of Order. I didn't know how really to move a conversation or a person or the room or a community in the way that I wanted to. I kind of would just make almost an argument to try to convince everyone to come to my side. What I've learned after being chair for an entire term and being reelected to chair is that you can't punch people into believing what you want them to believe. Some people are never going to believe it anyway, but sometimes you have to meet people where you are. Know what your power is. Your power lies in your personality. Your power lies in your own personal traits. Your power lies in your mentors, people who are mentoring you. Your power lies in your faith. Your power lies in your family. Your power lies in your passion. Know your power and tap into your own power. Your power may not be someone else's power. There are other people who have a gavel in Virginia. They may not use it as well as I have learned how to use my gavel. Just having a gavel doesn't give me power. Knowing how to wield my gavel, knowing when to come down hard or when to be a velvet hand, that is how I use my power and use my gavel. So know your power, because not everyone uses power in the same way. Not everyone has power in the same way. The John Lewis of the 1960s and the John Lewis of 2010 were very different people, but still had power that he had to use in the way that he had to use it. So your power can change sometimes depending on you, your experiences, the situation, but you always have that power. Know your power and know how to use it. Let me quickly tell you all, I have 3 minutes left, what your power is right now. I'm the head of the county board. On a regular basis, young people call me and they tell me what their issues are. Some of the things that have happened from young people, and I mean middle and high school students, have called me and said things like, why are we using pesticides to control the weeds in Loudoun County? Those pesticides are harmful. Let's find something else to do. Let's find another way to control the vegetation in Loudoun County so we're not using pesticides. Young people brought that to me, brought it to the board. We made a change in how we actually control vegetation. Young people came to me and said, my street is flooding every time it rains. Why is that happening? Come out and watch it. And I did. And then we called BDOT and figured out how for that street not to flood. Young people did that. They brought that to me and they told me about that. Young people said to me, I don't think that my school is treating me equitably and fairly, and gave me examples of how their school wasn't treating them equitably and fairly. I called over to the school board, talked to the superintendent, and some things are changing. Young people have power. We often think of people who only vote, who can vote, have power. That is not true. If you have a good elected official, you have power. Know where your power is. Know how you have power on a regular basis. Well, before COVID and even a couple of times during COVID, I have young people come into the county building and have a day with me where they shadow me. They shadow me and they're with me all day long in every single meeting, even the hard meetings and in the boardroom. I conduct mock meetings in the boardroom all the time where I put young people on the dais, give them an issue to work out, make one of them the chair, switch that out, give them the gavel and have them run meetings. I do that all the time. Truthfully, my community, African Americans, haven't really asked me to do that as much as the other communities have. Please find a date to bring people into the boardroom. The boardroom, even in COVID, very safe. We have partitions up and everything. It's probably one of the safest buildings you can be in, even during COVID. You have power. You have power in your voice right now. You don't have to wait to vote to have that power. Finally, I will say, always be part of the political process. Always. If you can't vote, find out who you support and why. Do mail drops, ask questions, make phone calls. Whatever you can do to be part of the political process, be part of the political process and be part of it for every single election, not just every 4 years. Thank you for having me here. I will talk to you all day, but I'll stop talking.
Ms. Phillips, we definitely appreciate, all your remarks. And I know, not just based on what I've heard you, talk about today, but I appreciate you giving context beyond your current position. I think that's very helpful for not just our youth, but our community, regardless on where we may reside. And I appreciate you, as you said earlier, not just telling the high moments, really showing really people like that's a part of the journey, that's a part of the process, and embracing that and really being transparent with your emotions with that. So I want to make sure that we open this up for Q&A. I know your time is very valuable, like everybody else's. So I want to make sure that individuals have an opportunity to respond to your remarks. And if they have questions, they can put them in the chat room or come off of their mute or raise their hand, and we can go from there as far as calling on individuals who might have questions for you. I'll start off with the first one to kind of get the ball rolling. I know obviously you have been very integral in advocating within public education, and obviously being a practitioner as far as an elementary principal in Northern Virginia is something that's very passionate for me. Obviously I used to serve in LCPS, so I'm very familiar with Parkview High School in Sterling, Virginia, and a lot of the politics that come along with that. What are some of the things that you're seeing in education that need to be advocated for, or things that need to be brought to light where people can get plugged in, not just in our local area here in Northern Virginia, but regardless on where they are as far as being a part of that process? As you talked about earlier, we get so hyped about the presidential elections, but a lot of the things that really affect us on a day-to-day span is really at the local level. So
Absolutely.
specifically around public education,
Yeah.
if you could speak to those types of things that you're seeing kind of going on right now in K-12.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for asking me that. And, you know, any school system will talk about their numbers overall. So if you know politics, there's something called crosstabs in a political poll. So any school system will say things like our on-time graduation rate is 94%, 95%, which is what it is in Loudoun, which is a very high graduation rate, and that is fantastic. But when you pull those numbers down a little bit, what you find is that African American and Hispanic kids in Loudoun County are not graduating with advanced degrees. African American kids and Hispanic kids in Loudoun County are not getting into the National Honor Society or even taking those honors classes and those advanced classes. And what I tell parents all the time is so important to know is you cannot expect that your child's going to be ready to take a high level class when they get in high school if they haven't done the preparation in elementary and middle school. And so, as I said on the call last night, it's so important that if you feel your child can be in the Futura program in elementary school or take honors courses in middle school, to do that, to push them to do that, because the school system, it's a good school system, but they don't really push our kids to challenge themselves to the hardest places. They may push them to graduate. That keeps that graduation rate up, but they're not pushing them to take the highest courses. I had a person tell me one time they didn't want to overwhelm my child in his academics. Don't worry about overwhelming my child in his academics. His father and I have that, but but make sure that we have to make sure that our kids are being pushed really, really hard. I remember my youngest was in middle school, and they were all reading a book, and he was reading Harry Potter. And for whatever reason, his reading teacher took the Harry Potter book from him and gave him a book called Monster, because he said that he thought Aaron could better relate to the book Monster. Completely inappropriate book for my middle school child to read. And I went to school. I said, "What makes you think that my Lansdowne child is going to relate to the book called Monster?" And so you really, really have to go to your PTA meetings, go to your PTO meetings, be involved in MSAC, go to your back to school nights, talk to the teachers, email them, do all those things, because the success of all of our children does rely on how involved all of us are. And that's it's not saying we don't have a good school system. We do, but we have to be aware of what's happening with our kids in the school system as well.
Agreed. I believe there was a comment put in the chat room saying if we have a concern, it sounds like specifically within Loudoun County, how might they, contact you or get in contact with you?
My email is phyllis.randall@loudoun.gov. phyllis.randall@loudoun.gov. That comes straight to me. If you want to go to the full board, it's BOS, Board of Supervisors, BOS@loudoun.gov. That's it. Send us an email. My EA is actually on the call with us right now. I think both my EA and my LA are probably both on this Zoom call with us right now. We usually try to turn emails around within 24 hours. But absolutely reach out to us and ask us. And if it's not even an issue, if you just want to come in and shadow with us for a day, if you want to get 9 kids together and come in and do a mock meeting, I'll spend the whole afternoon with you. A fun afternoon, do a mock meeting, have lunch, take you around all the county departments. We can do that. It happens all the time. So if that's what you want, just reach out to us.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, but I know I have another question. I don't want to dominate the conversation. So anytime somebody wants to raise their hand and ask a question, please just raise your hand or come off of mute. But I know I appreciate your response earlier as far as advocating for our kids, early within their education. That's definitely something I'm passionate about, being at the elementary level and early childhood level, even 0 to 4, quite honestly, because I believe it even that preparation before kids are even in kindergarten. But I think for me also, something I've been thinking a lot about for some time now is the history and context and structures that are in place and still are in place within how we zone our counties, as far as the lines that are drawn where kids are specifically going, even the zones as far as voting, as far as where you vote, and how that is still perpetuated as far as our government segregated areas in America and also in our counties and our states. One of the books I'm reading right now, The Color of Law, is highlighting that. And it's something I definitely would promote for other people to read. Obviously, I'm not the author, but I definitely want to promote, good quality information and knowledge. But could you speak to that also at the local level? Because I think that also perpetuates within our schools, within our voting, within how things are still perpetuated as far as segregation in our communities. And obviously that goes into public education, a whole lot of other issues within social justice and our government. But if you could speak to that piece, specifically where you are in Loudoun.
Yeah, there's a practice called redlining that actually so let me just back up. The elected body that's in office every 10 years at the census actually draws the district lines and election lines. And that's a really important job. I mean, one of the reasons that it was so important to me last year to get the board that I wanted to get is because this board will draw the district lines in for Loudoun County. The state, the General Assembly will draw the House and Senate lines, and then congressional lines will be drawn at the congressional level. Each level is really very, very important. It is amazing how much inequalities can be legally done, right? You can put things in place that are separate and unequal, even now legally if you're in office. And so how you draw district lines matters a lot. There was something called redlining that actually basically took large swaths of African Americans and they drew the lines not in a contiguous fashion to put all the African Americans in one place, which meant they got one representative, period. It wasn't spread out. And then, things like housing prices were decided in those areas. How many liquor stores were put down were in those areas. How much open space, green space, parks and things were not in those areas. So you can have areas that are incredibly social justice unequal just by how they're drawing lines. Probably the most egregious example ever is there was a housing project in Chicago called the Cabrini Green Housing Project. My gosh, they built a very large housing project, put very income struggling people in there, poor schools, poor water and sewer, no park space, no open space, no green space. It was just a nightmare. And then on every corner, there's a liquor store. So how you draw lines when you're in office is very, very important. This year, this term is a census. The census, depending on who you talk to, either ended 2 days ago or will go over or finish on October 31st, depending on which judge you believe. But at the end of the census, we get a count of how many people live in the county. Loudoun County is still one of the fastest growing counties in the country. We grow by about 33 people a day. It's a really fast growing county. So the board right now will draw district lines to say like who lives in each certain district. The school board actually draws the lines for the school system and what schools you go to. And again, that's why it's really important of who your school elected representatives are, because they draw school boundary lines. And if there is a school that is failing, and I'm not saying they're doing this, but if there was a school that was failing, they can decide who goes to that failing school. And then they decide what principals at that school, what teachers are at that school, what those schools receive. So during the census years, and when this is a census year, those things become very, very real and very, very important. And again, when I go back to know your power, I have the gavel. Right? I will set the agenda of when we start drawing the lines in Loudoun County. I will set the agenda of who's involved in that discussion. I will set the agenda of, did we get an outside group or did we hire an outside consultant? I will do that because I have the gavel. I have the gavel. That's why local elections and school elections are so important. I say all the time, yes, go vote for your president. But the minute your stoplight in front of your business goes out, which actually can bring more crime to your area, you don't call the president to get your stoplight, the street light turned back on. You call your city council member or you call your supervisor. These local elections are incredibly, incredibly important. And most people, and I will say most Black people, don't vote in our elections, unfortunately.
Thank you for that. I know Dr. Gerald Mann has his hand raised and he has a question for you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your keynote this morning. I have a question. As far as the county supervisors, how do you interact with the school board and any policies that they set and funding and being working at central office in Alexandria? I'm just curious the relationship between the group that you run and the school board in Loudoun County. Thank you.
So absolutely. So the county board funds the school system. We give them the money that they need to run the schools, but we don't have operational control over the schools. The school system does that themselves. So the school system decides, the school board, discipline policy, curriculum, all those things is decided by the schools. But having said that, funding is a pretty powerful tool. And I will tell you, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the school was asking for some of the $12.2 million of CARES Act money. And we can say we need information, they can give it to us, they don't got to actually follow through with what they say. The bigger and maybe more important relationships are what happens off the dais. And so I feel very comfortable calling any of the school board members on a regular basis and having discussions with them. I call our school board chair, our school board vice chair, the two of them and I and the vice chair of the board. We talk probably weekly. The county administrator talks to the school board superintendent absolutely weekly, if not almost daily. So we have these discussions all the time. And so the relationships are really, really very, very important. Not to mention, I used to be the chair of the Minority Student Achievement Advisory Committee. And so some of those subcommittees of the school boards are subcommittees that I helped set up and that are still active today. So technically all we do is fund the schools. However, if you go one relationship level deeper than that, we talk about things that are important to me with them on a regular basis. Linwood, I saw a question about COVID and coming into the county board building. So Linwood, right now, the county board room will hold 35 people. According to BDH CDC standards in a socially distanced way. The dais is we have 6 feet on the dais, and we have partitions between us on the dais, big, humongous partitions between us on the dais. So even right now, Linwood, if people are being socially distancing, wearing the mask and all those types of things, even right now, I wouldn't be back in the boardroom if I didn't think it was safe for myself. And I certainly wouldn't have anybody in the boardroom or on the dais if I didn't think it was safe. So the social distance is there, the screening is there, the cleaning is done on a regular basis. And so if you all feel like you don't want to wait until next school year to come into the boardroom and do like a mock day, you don't have to, but just let me know. We will make it work.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. I'm looking in the chat. I believe Michael has in here. What has been your greatest obstacle as chair and a woman of color?
When I was elected, the first term, I'm the first person of color to be an elected chair in Virginia. And I had a board that was 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and all the Republicans on the board, none of them were very happy that I had won. The first year of my first term was just horrible. I mean, I could tell you, I could tell you stories that you just wouldn't even believe the first year of my first term. The effort to strip me of the power of the gavel, literally putting things in, changing the rules of order that did strip me of some of my powers. It was astonishing how bad my first year was. And at one point, I was again saying, okay, God, you let me on, and now this is happening. What's going on here? And, you know, I am by profession a mental health therapist. And after about 9 months, I realized that be a mental health therapist, right? And so there were some techniques you learn in mental health of how to get people to move and communicate with you. So I started using some of those techniques. But it was very, very difficult because they just were not happy who I was. I would tell you one of the most bizarre things that happened. And by the way, I mean, I get threats on a regular basis. I get death threats. Elizabeth's on the call with me right now. She was the person that I got a death threat. Somebody sent me a tarot card of death and told me that I wouldn't be here by the end of the year. I mean, that, and right now, I mean, it's not unusual at all for me to get death threats, are just fairly vile and horrible comments. But I'll tell you all a quick story. In our third year, our second year, we were having a discussion about whether we were going to put AstroTurf in all the schools. Some schools had AstroTurf, some schools had grass. And so there was this group of parents who started this thing called turf equality, meaning that they wanted this to have turf as well, and they didn't want the kids to play on grass. And there's about 3 schools. And so we're in the boardroom, we're on the dais, and a man comes up to the dais and he looks at me and he starts his comments with, "Chair Randall, you're Black." Now, normally that's not the best way to start comments, right? So he said, "Chair Randall, you're Black. Your people understand inequalities." And then he went through slavery and the civil rights movement and dogs being beset up on people and people being hung. And he finished all that. And then he said, "That's exactly how we feel when we can't play on AstroTurf." And I remember sitting there thinking, what is happening right now? How are you comparing hundreds of years of slavery and Jim Crow and civil rights and all that to your daughter not being able to play field hockey on AstroTurf? And my whole goal that moment was not to look to my right, because sitting at my right was the vice chair, Karan Sains. I could feel him looking at me from the side. And I thought, I just can't look at Karan. I can't look at Karan. So when you have the gavel and you're on camera, you just kind of shake your head and go, and you just don't respond. And when we got off today, as one of my white colleagues, he said to me, "That was racist, right?" And so I sat down with the board and I explained, and I was shocked that I was doing this, but I explained why comparing AstroTurf games was not comparable to slavery and civil rights and Jim Crow. And sometimes the hardest thing is just having to have those conversations with people who don't really understand without getting, but want to understand without getting upset and without getting, indignant, but just to have the conversations, because you really think who in the world could think this is an okay discussion to have? But you have to have the conversations, and having the conversations really does move people if you can do it in a calm manner as possible. And the end of the discussion, my colleagues were like, "Yeah, we understand why that wasn't okay and why that was upsetting." Karan was just like, "I'm done." He walked out the room. He just like, "I'm not doing this." He walked out the room. But sometimes the hardest things is meeting people where they are. So if you have people who really want to understand, meet them where they are, because if they don't know, they don't know. Meet them where they are and have these discussions with them. And that's been really hard sometimes, besides the threats and all the names and all those things, but which is fairly regular for me I will have security sit outside my house when threats get really bad. But, those things are, you just kind of get used to them, unfortunately. But the conversations have been some of the hardest things sometimes.
Well, we definitely appreciate all the time that you've spent with us, Ms. Randall. I know it's been a blessing. I know I've had an opportunity to talk with you, one-on-one in times, and it's good to see you. It's been a while, and hopefully, I'll be able to see you at some point when COVID,
Oh,
lifted and we're back out there and
yes.
connecting on that level. But I just want to say thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your story and responding to everyone's questions very thoughtfully. It's very important to me to make sure that our community is coming together. That's one of my passions. And so wherever individuals are, wherever you are sitting, regardless if you're in Virginia, Maryland, or East Coast, West Coast, or in the South, or wherever you may be on this call right now, these are things that we can do in our respective communities, regardless if it's with the school system or our local governments or even nationally. We all have a part to play. And for me, I think it's all of us running our race and staying in our lane and staying focused on the finish line. So I know that's what you're doing in your respective seat, not only professionally, but also personally and spiritually. So thank you so much.
Well, Mr. Powell, I think you're just fantastic. And I think, you work with some of the hardest kids. Little tiny people are hard. They are hard. Little older people can actually talk some, but little tiny people, they're really hard. So you work with some of the hardest kids. And so I appreciate you so much. I appreciate Operation Uplift, but I appreciate you so much. And if you all need anything, you all know how to reach me. Please do reach me, reach out to me. I am here for however I can help.